Otherwise, it's sort of just like land, go, I'll pass, I'll wait for a good opportunity to react, and it's kind of waiting for those kind of big juicier spells to really hit for those kind of moments to like pull the trigger here. But a little bit of the debate about whether or not it looks like to utilize the frog, or maybe kind of deciding what to get exiled, because this is not necessarily a snapcaster list for the Dimir Blink style, but it still can be useful to get rid of some of those spells there.
Well, there are 2 Snapcasters in Luca's deck, so there's definitely a bit of value at exiling those creatures or those instants or sorceries as well to deny Snapcaster. Yeah, and getting to have that swing back in tempo is very important, because blue-black is a deck that if it plays from ahead, it feels unbeatable sometimes, but it has troubles while playing from behind. So it looks like Michel went for the Adapt, which was met by Shieldred's Edict, and then in response they adapted again, reanimated the Psychic Frog, and then chose to sacrifice the Psychic Frog instead of Emperor to preserve the 4/4 body, which makes sense. Like Luca is at 14, will take few more points of damage with Shocklands and Fetchlands, so it is a nice clock, especially given that Michel knows that Luca has 2 counterspells in hand, so being able to present a board presence when there are counterspells at the ready, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, I mean the threat is real here. Like we talk about, like with the tempo deck, if you are ahead, you're feeling really good, but right now you're playing from behind, so like even this kind of just a 4/4 is enough to kind of be like, okay, the creatures that I can be able to put in the way are going to be not as effective. I don't want to waste some of my removal spells like Fatal Push or Sheldred's Edict on this. I'd rather save them for the frogs or some of the other threats. But at some point, you kind of have to make those decisions of like, when do you deal with the Emperor here and kind of stop all this extra damage, because the fetching is real, the shotgun, right? The ways that you kind of shred your own life does play a big impact here. But looks like we are going to be dropping in, doing a nice little consult here, do a nice little looking at those top 4 and being able to find at least a couple more resources available to kind of help us out. And looks like the Sheldred's Edict here is that kind of debate back and forth whether we want that one or not.
Yeah, I think
it's a good removal, right?
Yeah, I think it's Edict, Snare, Field of Ruin, and it's Edict, Wonshitong. Field of Ruin and Counterspell. It looks like Wonshitong and Edict were the choices, and that consult was huge because I don't think that Michel knew about it. So now Luca got to spend their 4 mana on a very impactful spell, and they can move forward with their game plan. And Michel's hand is, I think they just picked up the fairy, but there is definitely a frog and a solitude in hand. I think it's frog, solitude.
So lots of ways to be able to kind of set up and go for their next set of game plan here. So yeah, it is really a lot of this is just kind of pushing it onto Luca and basically saying, hey, this is your time to try to figure out, and I'm going to force you to react, and then I can be able to set up something else, maybe even scarier. So Sheldred's Edict is going to come and try to get rid of that Emperor there, so forcing some of the removal out of hand.
Yeah, and then we'll maybe we won't see Teferi being cast, I think, seeing that Michel knows about counterspells in Luca's hand, but the spell that was drawn a few turns ago was such a huge deal here. Because now resolving Teferi into 2 open mana won't happen, because once again Michel knew that. Michel knows about that. I guess.
So, is this just like, I'm going to force as much of your removal out of hand so then I can maybe eventually get into like a secondary game plan here? Or what do you feel about the Teferi into the counterspell here?
I think that's reasonable to take this line sometimes. Right now it makes some sense, but I think I would wait for one more turn, because at this point, if you cast Teferi, then Luca will counterspell with 2 mana. That's all they have, and they get to spend their mana efficiently. If you pass and you try to do this next turn, maybe you draw a 4Seasons to pick a hole in Luca's hand before, or even if you don't pick 4Seasons, next turn, if Luca doesn't play land, they have 5 lands, and you playing Teferi is forcing them to use Counterspell, which means they only have 3 mana left, which if they draw like another Consult, or they took Consult from the first Consult, now they can't play Consult, and they don't get to use their mana as well. So you are stranding some of their resources by doing so.
I like that. And then our Surveillant was able to pitch that Ulamog. So now we finally have a big, scary threat in the graveyard here. But
yeah, also a very heads up play. I think from Michel was fetching when Luca was tapped out to play around Wonshitong with their fetch land, which is something that I think people are getting pretty used to right now, because Wonshitong has been in the format for quite some time. But I remember playing the RC Antwerp right after Avatar was released, and I did face a Wonshitong deck at that tournament, and it was definitely something to keep in mind at all times, and especially in closed deck list, because RC was open deck list. I saw for Wonshitong, so I've made this immediate connection in my brain that you have to play around it. But in open deck list, I think the first few weeks it was very easy to gut people with Wonshitong, because just people weren't used to it, especially if you play mostly paper, not online. Maybe are lagging like a few days behind, because paper meta tends to be a bit slower, especially at local events.
That is one of those interesting things when new cards like Wang Shitong or other cards that come out, where players almost have to like reevaluate some of the ways that they make lines and decision makings when it comes to like, oh, normally I would just fetch and be fine, and then it's like cards like Wang Shitong that like has that little gotcha moment there. But we do see the deployment here, going to be able to at least get some draw effect, and then we'll blow up the green source here. So just in case things got really late and we were going to try to cast like a hard cast Atraxa, if we, that's like plan Z in the Goryo's line here, but it still is a thing that exists. So I like that. Also forcing the shuffle here with Field of Ruin, really powerful.
Yeah.
So gets at least another draw in here, or at least another counter in here. We're going to basically do a little bit more setting up here, but this is also that tough moment of you're deploying all these resources to do this, but that leaves you open now with no mana for a counterspell.
Yeah, maybe there's because that definitely was a relatively aggressive Field of Ruin. So I wonder if Luca picked up Snare at some point that we've missed. I don't think that Goryo is known information for Luca. So like it is reasonable to want to take a risk at some point and get your stuff going. And we'll see what happens now, especially given that Ulamog isn't actually super threatening now. Well, I guess Luca is at 7 life, so it is a lethal attacker. But it has Annihilator 2 right now, I think. Because there is Frog. Maybe there's a card underneath Frog that we can't see, but I see Frog. I see 1 Edict and 1 Push on the other side from as far as exiled card goes. So it would force Luca to sacrifice 2 lands and block with Wonshitong. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how the game develops from here.
Yeah, kind of. You see that sort of like already kind of eyeballing it and confirming, like definitely looking at the Ulamog right now and kind of debating, okay, do we go for it? I mean, it's like this would be the window to try to force something too, of like my opponent's basically tapped out, a 7/7 gets a little bit bigger off the, like you talked about with the cards in exile, to put some more counters on it, could force the Annihilator stuff. But if there's the spell snare, then that plan just kind of goes out the window. So there is that kind of hesitation, it looks like right now, of whether or not to go for this sort of line. I believe we also saw a Solitude in hand as well, so we could kind of pivot and just sort of go something like that route, and even just like hard cast that and just be like, all right, clear your Wang Shi Tong and kind of go this route to try to make something happen for the next stage of things. But
yeah, especially since I think that doing so, cracking Field of Ruin in that spot with counterspell that's known to both player in hand, I think Michel puts Luca on Spellsnare quite heavily right now, because we've already been a good amount of cards deep into the library, and I think there's only one Spellsnare in Luca's graveyard, and they're playing 3 copies. So it is quite reasonable to think that there is a Spellsnare in hand. I don't think there is one, but yeah, so...
Okay, so yeah, going for the Solitude here. So like, but that's really important to note though, is the idea of, okay, there's one in the graveyard. I'm keeping track of what things are looking like. There could be a spell snare. I don't want to put myself in a weird spot. So let's just try to go for it here. And gonna just do both. Let's go. Clear the path. Goryo's Vengeance, bringing back Ulamog, and there's the hand extended. Wow.
Yeah. Also, nice thing about Ulamog, or an interesting interaction in this deck, is with Emperor of Bones, which is why Luca or Michel checked how Ulamog is worded. Because if you exile Ulamog with Emperor and then you put it in play, it sees itself.
Interesting.
So even if there are no other cards exiled, you will still get to put 10 counters on Ulamog, and Ulamog will have 20 power and Annihilator 10, which is pretty good on most boards, I'd say.
I would say I would not want to be facing that there. So that was the first match that we got to see. The Goryo stuff is cool. Like, I don't feel like the showcasing the tempo was like a bad showcasing, but I feel like you made a good point in that is like, it's hard to, when you're playing from behind, to like do those little catch up moments. It feels really good and really powerful when you're playing ahead, but it was like definitely one of those moments where you're like, okay, I'm struggling to kind of keep up with the power level that Goryo's is throwing at me there. So we do have a second feature match that's going to be coming up for us here to be able to showcase. Who do we got for our second one?
So our second feature match is the Boogeyman of Modern, which is Boros Energy. There is a bit of, according to the graphic, there's a bit of black splash, but that's just surgical extraction. So we can comfortably say that it is Boros Energy. Mm-hmm. Giovanni Carlini is playing the Boros Energy deck, which has been the most popular deck in Modern, basically ever since.
I mean, since Modern Horizons 3, right? It's like Nadu was there, Nadu got out, and it's like even during that time, players were experimenting with the Boros Energy stuff, and it's the one that has kind of stuck around the most since then.
Even at the first at the MH3 PT, where Nadu dominated, a player from Turkey, Bora Sarigolu, they went 8-2 in the constructed part of the PT with Energy, and has been playing the deck ever since. That's just basically, Energy is basically the Jaunt of the format right now.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Just the best threats, the most efficient threats in the format, great interaction, Flayed, which is like top 5 cards in the format, probably, if not even higher than that. You have a very high explosive potential with Goblin Bombardment and Ajani as well. Mm-hmm. So great clean mana, only playing 2 colors. You get to use Surveillance to the fullest with Flage. You get to play Blood Moon. You get to play so many powerful hosers that both, mostly white, but also red, gives you access to. So there's a good reason why Energy has been the most popular deck basically since forever.
Right. Oh, okay. So on the other side of the table, we've got a Bant birthing ritual here. So, the birthing ritual style decks, like they've kind of existed for a little while here, especially the Simic version of things. But we've got a little bit of a twist on this with that specific extraction specialist. That's that 3-drop white creature there that lets you reanimate one of your other creatures. Now, the other creature you reanimate